Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.
This week at Safeway, shop the 10 for $10 produce sale. With the 10 for $10 produce sale, get items like large avocados, mangoes, green, red, orange, or yellow bell peppers, cucumbers, large lemons, or 16-ounce bags of Signature Farms baby-peeled carrots for the member price of just $1 each. Plus, select meats like Signature Farms 80% lean ground beef and Signature Select extra meaty pork loin back ribs are buy one, get one free this week. Hurry in before these deals are gone. Visit Safeway.com for more deals. Ozcast.
Well, Nest family, I'm not sure there is an Eagles game in history that has left you as happy after a loss as the one on Sunday. Josh Kennedy's farewell went as well as it could possibly go, bar for the 4 points. Drew Jones, it was an Eagles day to remember, wasn't it?
Darby, it was about as enjoyable as it can be when there's nothing really on the line as far as the result goes. I just can't have, apart from the result, I just can't imagine how it could have possibly gone better. And what a day. You know, it's going to go down in folklore. We'll always remember it. And the good thing is that even now, you barely even think about the result of the game when you think about the enjoyment that you got from the game. It was special, and you know, it's hard to think how you could possibly do Josh Kennedy's career justice and how you could do his send-off justice, but we got pretty bloody close, I reckon.
That we did. It was awesome. Did we kick to him a little bit too much? Would that have made a difference to the result if we'd maybe spread out the options in attack? I mean, he capitalised on him. He kicked 8. Couple of times maybe we looked at him a little bit too much and maybe we could have picked out someone else. Did that cross your mind at all?
Yeah, I reckon we went through a little phase in the second quarter where we went to him a bit too much, and a couple of times even Josh, I reckon, maybe tried to do a bit too much when he was near the ball. But then we sort of snapped out of that a little bit. Unfortunately, the Crows, was at the start of the third quarter, they really blew us out of the water. And then Josh helped us get back in the game. But yeah, there were a few little periods when maybe we were looking for him a bit too much. But honestly, could you blame anyone? You just wanted to see him have the ball in his hands as much as possible. He's still got it. Like, if the knee wasn't so dicky, he'd still be kicking goals for fun for a while to come.
Yeah, for sure. And I've seen a couple of Melbourne scribes say, you know, try and convince him to go to a team that's challenging for the flag next year. I mean, that's ridiculous because you can set yourself for one game. It's another thing to go through a whole pre-season again. I mean, you can't just rock up round one or rock up in the finals and play footy and kick a bag. Like, you got to actually get your body right. And that was the part that he couldn't quite do anymore. And let's not forget, he was rested twice in the last few weeks to get him right for this game. They knew 2 months ago this was going to be his last game. So they sort of staggered him in the lead up to this so that he'd be right. It's the notion that he could go and play for another team, even though mentally he's there. Yeah, that's just not accurate. So we're happy as Eagles fans, obviously, that he ended the way that he did as an Eagles legend. And, you know, for me, a top 5 player in our history. I mean, that was a debate that was an enjoyable one, I think, during the week. Where do you rank Josh Kennedy? And I struggle to reconcile an Eagles forward being better than Peter Sumich. I got my head around that the last few years, but he was my hero growing up. Loved Suma, and I wouldn't have a discussion for years around any forward being better than Sumich. Obviously, Kennedy has eclipsed him, not just in numbers, but overall contribution, as great as Suma was, who I think is top 20 all-time AFL goal-kicking averages, Peter Sumich, which is quite something. But Kennedy, 24 all-time in terms of goals, is obviously a level above. But, yeah, I think he is top 5 all-time. I would go Matera, Judd, Cousins, Cox, Kennedy. He'd be my 5th, just ahead of Djakovic. They'd be very close, those two, though.
Yeah, I reckon that's the 6.
Yeah.
And it's in some order there. And I think Worsfold is the fact that he is a 2-time premiership player and a premiership coach. He sits somewhere probably on his own, but as far as pure playing ability and achievements as a player, I don't think you can put him in that 6. It's a fascinating argument. Like Will Schofield has Kennedy 1.
Yeah.
He thinks he's the best ever.
I mean, with all due respect to Will, though, he played with Kennedy fine, but he grew up as a Geelong fan. Like, did he watch the Eagles growing up? Did he watch Matera? Did he watch Djakovic? Did he watch Guy McKenna? I'm not so sure that he did. Did he watch even as much as Judd in his early days before he went across to the Eagles? You know what I mean?
You know who's actually probably best placed to comment is actually John Worsfold.
Yeah.
Like, he's probably had the most time at the club. He missed Kennedy's probably best 3 years over that stretch where he won a couple of Colemans and kicked up over 220 goals over a 3-year stretch. But yeah, probably Worsfold, or I guess Nizzy is probably the other one.
For sure.
Trevor Nisbet, who'd be the one who could comment on it. But there's obviously a few midfielders in that sort of bracket of 6. Is midfield is that the easiest position because to sort of dominate in, I guess, because it's easier to get the accolades? There's only one person who can win the Coleman.
Exactly.
Whereas a lot of players can gather 30 possessions a game. For his position to have been so good for so long and to be, in this modern era, sort of alongside Hawkins and Franklin as one of the best key forwards in the game, you can make a pretty strong case. Is he the best key position player to have played for West Coast, or does Cox have him there, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, if you're counting a ruckman as a key position player, I would say Coxie would just have him. Outside of that, then, it's him or Djakovic for that honour. You're right. I mean, midfielders are easier to find. Simple as that. I saw someone pose the question today, which Josh Kennedy had the best career? I'm like, well, best career you can maybe argue each way, but who's been the more valuable player? It's always the forward. When a forward has the longevity like the Eagles' Josh Kennedy has had, as great as the Sydney's Josh Kennedy has been, and it's quite something that they're retiring within 7 days of each other.
Amazing, yeah.
That is quite amazing. And then they had such a contrasting day on Sunday. Josh Kennedy kicks 8. Sydney's Josh Kennedy does his hamstring and his career is just about over off the back of that. They're just harder to find, key forwards. Key defenders are even easier to find, to be honest, because you can slot a person there to do a job. You can't do a job as a forward. You can do a job as a third banana. You can't do a job as a number one key forward for so long. You have to be a gun to survive in a team more than 5 years, right? You have to be an absolute star. And so he was that for an inordinate amount of time, which is fantastic. And I've got him 5, and I agree with you. I think the 6 is locked in up to Djakovic. In fact, I think the 8's locked in. So I think it's Matera, Judd, Cousins, Cox, Kennedy, Djakovic, Kerr and Glass. I think the 8 is locked in. And then I reckon you can make a number of different combinations for 9 and 10. I'd probably have Guy McKenna in there, and Luke Shuey might squeeze in, but I would not argue against Dean Kemp. I would not argue against Shannon Hearn. I wouldn't argue against Jeremy McGovern. Wouldn't argue against John Worsfold, etc. But I reckon the 8 up until Glass and Kerr, I'm locking that away. And then you can do whatever combination you want after that for the final 2 in our top 10.
Geez, we've been spoiled, haven't we? So I love this tweet by Cal Toomey. Pick 3 in the 2001 draft has to be the best selection for any club ever. It netted West Coast 405 games, 850 goals across 21 seasons, including 2 premierships, a Brownlow, a Norm Smith, 2 Coleman medals, 9 All-Australians. So that's across Judd and Kennedy. We got the best of Judd. We got the best of Kennedy. Obviously, he only played 2 seasons at Carlton. Pick 3 in 2001. Worked out pretty well for us, that's for sure. And gave us a lot of joy over those 21 years.
2 premierships. I mean, neither premiership happens without them. Simple as that. Yeah. You can't get away. As good as that midfield was, you can't win it without Judd, and you don't win 2018 without Kennedy.
So the 8-goal haul by Kennedy against Adelaide, and by the way, almost within the first 5 or 6 minutes, you could tell like something's up, like this is on. After they kicked those first 3 goals and West Coast settled into the game, you could almost tell that Kennedy was going to have that sort of day.
Yeah.
Him, when he kicked that goal from real close in, I don't know if that was number 8, like his response and reaction to the crowd, it reminded me of when, I know this is a bit niche, but when Thierry Henry scored for Arsenal against Leeds, I think in an FA Cup game where he'd come back on loan.
Yeah.
And it was more than just celebrating a goal, and it was more than just joy. It was like, what the hell is going on? Like pure elation, and then like the interaction with the crowd, like the wide eyes.
Yeah.
Like I'll never forget that. And I mean, I wish I was there. We all do. But he was having like a moment with the crowd then. It was more than just celebrating a goal. It was like, how bloody good is this?
Well, there's something special when a 30-odd-year-old man, grizzly-faced, flowing beard, weathered body, has the expression of a kid.
Yeah.
And that's what he had in his face. It was as if he was debuting again, or as if he was playing his first game in under 10s and, he kicked his first goal and he's running off to mum and dad and he can't believe what's just happened. That emotion was coming through in Josh Kennedy, and that's why it was such a beautiful day. In addition to farewelling a champion in the way that we were able to, his emotion that came out, his pure joy in that moment, and he led up to that. I mean, he said he doesn't care if he doesn't get a kick. He just wants to enjoy the moment of playing his final game and hopefully have a win. And then he goes and kicks 8. That it sums him up to a T. And I love some of the tributes about him during the week. And I thought Mark Robinson hit the nail on the head that never once did we see him have a go at a teammate. Did you ever see Josh Kennedy actually give it to a teammate? He might have given them guidance and said maybe kick there or hold off. Did he ever actually berate a teammate in public in all his time? I can't remember one incident.
No, I think he was just the absolute perfect pro. And he said, because he's so humble, and I know he doesn't like doing media, like it meant that his retirement press conference, like it wasn't a particularly memorable experience sort of as a reporter, but he said, like, I've always wanted to be a respected and loved teammate throughout my entire career. I've prided myself on that fact that everyone who's played with me would probably have enjoyed the experience. And like, he summed it up perfectly, really. Like there wouldn't be one West Coast or Carlton player who ever thought playing with Josh Kennedy wasn't an absolute pleasure and a joy. And there's probably young players in the West Coast team that would think that playing with JK is the highlight of their career. A legend of the modern era, one of the best key forwards we've seen, and certainly the best forward in West Coast history, and a bloke who celebrated other people's goals more than he celebrated his own, who would prefer to get a win than get a kick. Exactly what West Coast needed, as we've discussed when he arrived at the club. And I would say one of the most important players in our modern history.
Without a doubt. And a shame that we couldn't cap that all off with the win, but Adelaide are in really good form. There's some people who went, Eagles are winning this because of JK's last game. And I'm like, well, hang on. Adelaide almost beat Collingwood, who are second on the table right now. They gave Sydney an almighty scare at the SCG. I mean, Nick Blakey makes a big tackle late. He doesn't do that. Adelaide are within 14 points late in the third quarter. That's the Swans at the SCG, who are just with Collingwood, the informed team in the comp, and Geelong at the moment, and then beat Carlton. So it was never going to be easy. There's something about Darren Burgess, who is the former Liverpool, former Arsenal, former Socceroos, former Melbourne Demons, former Port Adelaide fitness guy, I reckon, in the Crows. They look super strong, and I think they're going to be decent in the next couple of years. So it was always going to be tough, close game, and it fell their way, unfortunately, at the end. But, that's the shame that we didn't get the win, but it was always likely to be a tight encounter, and unfortunately it just fell the way of the Crows.
Yeah, it was frustrating that they were allowed to score quickly in little patches, and whenever we get ourselves back in the game or even in front at one stage in the second quarter, we just sort of allowed them to pull away again. And we've bemoaned the defensive structures and other bits and pieces that haven't been up to scratch this season in particular, but it feels like it's been a pattern for a while since the premiership. So, yeah, I'm not shocked that we lost the game.
Yeah.
But, yeah, ultimately, as I said before, we probably won't think about that too much in the future. We'll be thinking about Josh and, yeah. I mean, I don't know about you, I started having these thoughts in the second quarter. I'm like, could he play one more game? Like, could he play in the Derby? Could we get some stem cell injections into that knee? You know, could we do some sort of leg transplant? Like, how can we get JK's abilities and personalities and plug it into an 18-year-old? Like, we want this guy to play forever. Like, it would be good to see him go, like him and Mundy to go out the same game. I mean, he's done, but it's nice to dream. It's such a shame that we don't get him for, you know, like it. Literally, I'm sitting here just thinking, just one more game. Like, I just want to see him play one more time.
Yeah, well, I think it was well structured because, you know, we almost won, and I don't think we're much chance against Freo. In fact, Freo's biggest margin against us is 75 points. I reckon that's in danger this week. Like with Kelly maybe missing with suspension, the antithesis of emotion that you'll have from JK, the drop-off, I'm worried about this week in a big way. I know Simo said after the game he's already spoken to the leaders because we got Freo and then Geelong about finishing off the season strongly because there's the risk of it being really embarrassing to end. Like, you get smashed in the Derby and then obliterated at Kardinia Park if Geelong decide to, you know, go into the finals break full steam ahead. That could get, and Jeremy Cameron goes for the Coleman medal, they could absolutely destroy us. So I hope we're on our game mentally, but I'm worried about this week. And yeah, I mean, a couple of moments in the game, I don't like focusing on the negatives, but Andrew Gaff drops 2 marks in the first 5 minutes that lead to goals against us. Like, we start nice, we win a clearance, kick it out to him on the wing, he drops an easy mark, they go the other way, kick a goal, and then he drops one in defensive 50 and they kicked a goal. And I just went, I mean, we started 3 goals behind. What was the final margin? 2 or 3 goals? Yep. Like, it had a big bearing on the game, I reckon, that those couple of incidents. And I just looked and I went, we've got to try. Gaffy's soldiered on. His form over the last 4 to 6 weeks hasn't been bad, but he looks like his body is really troubling him now as well. I hope we give guys like Naish and Winder and Clark a go in these final 2 weeks and get them to really attack it, because we got to blood a couple of them right now. And a couple of our older guys, in particular Gaffy, they just look like the body said, they need a break badly.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I don't know if I've missed something, but Gaff is playing slightly injured, isn't he? Like, is that a fact that Simo's spoken about? So why is he even playing? Well, like, if he's injured, if you're injured, then you're injured. Like, play Clark or Naish or any of the multitude of young players who are being kept out of the side. So I think one potential way to avoid a massive letdown and emotional flop this week would be to make changes.
Yeah.
Like, I wouldn't mind seeing a few different personnel come in.
Yeah.
I mean, I haven't got all the answers for you in terms of who goes out, but maybe having, like, I know we talk about this a lot, but like having Greg Clark in at centre bounce and freshening up maybe the mix around the ball.
Yeah.
Maybe that helps us against Freo. Like, let's get some hungry young guys who maybe feel like they're playing for their reputation or their spot on the list or for a new, better contract. That's the sort of impetus and hunger maybe we need this week, because I imagine there'll be a few that might be feeling like that they invested a lot of emotional energy on Sunday and it's going to be hard to back up.
Yeah. I'd like to see that, definitely. And I just don't think Gaffy's giving us anything. In fact, I think it's a harsh word to use, but he's a liability at the moment. And I think his form over the last 4 to 6 weeks has been solid. Nowhere near the return on the money, but it's a time to rest him. 6-day break as well. So I'd love to see that. Change it up a couple. Gaff out managed. Kennedy's already out. We might lose Kelly, probably will. We're going to be down on numbers, but it's a chance for youngsters to come in and prove they deserve a spot on the list. Patrick Naish, like, you're on a 1-year contract. Do you want to play AFL footy next year? We might give you another 1-year deal or rookie list you. But here's 2 weeks to go at it and show us what you're about. We'd love to see that sort of impetus put on a few players, and it might help us get through the final 2 games without losing heavily.
Yeah, I mean, certainly this week, I guess that's what they've got to worry about right now. I wouldn't be opposed to seeing an experienced side take on Geelong in round 23, just to, if they can help limit the damage. But yeah, Freo are going to be hungry.
Oh, yeah.
They were bloody good against the Dogs, and they'd been down for a couple of weeks. I think the Dogs have a couple of big deficiencies which allowed Fremantle to get their game back. And certainly if the Dogs are deficient in some areas, then, we're going to be the same, if not worse. So yeah, this is a great opportunity for Freo to run up the score a little bit and get into form. Garby, we're going to close part one off and pick back up shortly.
Yeah, we'll resume in a moment. All right, Drewy, let's get going again after that little break. But the Nest medal, how did you see the votes? I mean, the 5 was obviously locked away. Plenty of submissions from enthused Nest listeners after the game. How did the rest of the votes pan out? And is anyone getting close to Tom Barrass? He's a runaway leader, surely.
Well, I just thought that Tom Barrass was absolutely sensational.
Yeah.
Aside, alongside JK, obviously, who was superb with his 8 goals. I mean, I didn't feel like Taylor Walker barely even got the ball.
So let's just touch on this for a moment, because we spoke about this a couple of weeks ago. Is he any chance for the actual All-Australian team? I think it's May and Taylor and Sicily in a pocket, and that's it. Is he any chance?
I mean, he's certainly going to be in the 40.
You'd hope so. That'd be a big oversight.
If he's not in the 40, then that just shows that they've all stopped watching West Coast, because he's been immense.
And Glenn Jakovic might fall out of our top 10 altogether, because he's our bloody ambassador on the selection committee, right? Yeah,
and usually we have Jared Healy campaigning very strongly for West Coast. I feel like he's a West Coast apologist. I mean, there are a lot of good key defenders in the competition. I just think not many, apart from May and Taylor, are doing everything really well.
Mm.
And Barrass has taken his intercept marking to a new level, and he's certainly solid with ball in hand. But I just remember him being such a great defender, but the intercept side of things, he's really gone to a new level, partly because McGovern hasn't been in the team. I mean, you've watched a lot of GWS, whereas after the first few weeks of the season, when it became clear that they were not a very good team, I've probably zoned out a little bit. So I wouldn't feel that I'm as qualified to talk about Taylor's season as you are. But I watch a lot of Melbourne, and Stephen May is clearly the best defender in the comp as far as an overall package goes. So it's going to be hard to usurp those two. I think Sicily's had a great season. And if you're picking the 22 as if it could play, then Sicily's a great selection, because he can play on tall and small and can do the intercept and can do the rebounding. So, yeah, he probably doesn't make the 22, but he's been bloody good.
Yeah, and Paddy McCartan's been fantastic as well for Sydney. He'd be pretty close, very close. But Taylor's been ridiculous in a bad team, as has Barrass. I don't think Sam Taylor's been beaten once this season. So I think it'll be those two. And then, Sicily probably plays in a pocket as that halfback. Tom Stewart missed a lot of games. That probably counts against him, do you think, or does he still squeeze in?
He probably needs a good last 2 weeks. He was really poor last week. He barely got a kick, and he gave away 4 or 5 free kicks. I mean, he's a bloody good player. Sometimes it's hard to see past the suspension sometimes.
Yeah.
He'll probably end up missing sort of 5 or 6 games. Yeah.
Either way,
he'll be in the 40.
Yeah. Tommy will be our sole representative and our best and fairest winner, which will be great. Is anyone going to get close to him this season for the John Worsfold medal, best and fairest? I've got Barrass and then like a big gap to Kelly, Redden, Hearn. And then there's like daylight to the rest. McGovern probably, even though he's missed a truckload of games.
Yeah, I mean, who else has even played enough games? Like Cripps has had not a bad year.
Yeah, Cripps has been really good. His last 2 months have been really good, really good.
Redden's been so consistent. Hearn's been great. You can see why he's probably going to go around again.
Yeah.
Anyway, the votes, Nick Nat 3, Cripps 2, and Jermaine Jones 1, who again has been strong off halfback.
Hasn't he?
JK 5 and TB 4. Yeah, JJ's been good. He'll go down as one of our legit finds of the season. I mean, I know that Tommy Cole sort of takes his spot when he's available again, but he's given us something to think about. A bit of bounce off half back. He's tough, which we've always loved, and his kicking's been pretty good. So he found something there.
Yeah, I've just loved his enthusiasm. Like, you watch North Melbourne put Jaden Stevenson into the back line on the weekend, and it's just disastrous because he just seems lost there. But JJ's just seemed, he's relished the opportunity. That's what I've loved about it so much. Like, he made a couple of mistakes, and that's okay, but every single time we get the ball, he's making a run to try and get it and get us going with like 100% sprint, not just a run so that the coaches are happy that he's doing his job. He's actually desperately trying to get us going. Really enjoyed that. I think it's been a fantastic move by the coaching staff, and good on him.
I'm with you. Team tip for this week, Huey Dixon comes in, I reckon. 9 tackles, 20 hit-outs, and I think a couple of goals in the waffle. He'll get a chance to impress the last 2 weeks, maybe get himself a contract.
I think he will. I think Winder might come in, Clark, and one of Clark or Nate. I think probably Clark. And we'll hopefully see a bit of energy from some youngsters and a couple of impressive performances to round out the season. Hopefully we go okay in the derby and make it competitive, but I'm fearing the worst, Drewy.
Yeah.
This week at Safeway, shop the 10 for $10 produce sale. With the 10 for $10 produce sale, get items like large avocados, mangoes, green, red, orange, or yellow bell peppers, cucumbers, large lemons, or 16-ounce bags of Signature Farms baby peeled carrots for the member price of just $1 each. Plus, select meats like Signature Farms 80% lean ground beef and Signature Select extra meaty pork loin back ribs are buy one, get one free this week. Hurry in before these deals are gone. Visit Safeway.com for more deals.
Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to AuscastNetwork.com for details.